A lot of my favorite video games came from relatively small teams of indie developers, sometimes even just a single person. I find it inspiring and somehow relatable whenever I see smaller creators open up about their passion projects in front of possibly millions of strangers on the internet. It's a pretty scary prospect, yet nowadays there's been more and more people presenting their life work online. I have more than admiration for every single one of you who have the courage to do that. Even though I could spend this entire video singing the praise of indie games and their creators, I find myself in this weird situation. It's been getting increasingly harder to keep up with the indie scene. There are a lot of games from many different developers that I'm looking forward to, and don't get me wrong, I absolutely love that. I'm so glad we're at a point where indie isn't just this weird niche anymore and that more and more people get into those amazing projects. But at the same time, if it takes me months of stalling and hoping I don't finish a game too early because I find it fun, you can probably tell I don't finish a lot of games unless they're relatively short. Which is why today we'll be talking about the Haunted PS1 Demo Disc 2021, a compilation of 25 spooky demos to put you in the Halloween mood. It technically came out in last March, but I'm kinda late to the party. But it's okay, no better time than the present, right? First and foremost, I want to thank the Haunted PS1 community for putting out such a huge and impressive project. You can tell the community is full of extremely talented people. I've heard a lot of good things about them, and I kinda regret waiting this long before covering their work. I first heard of Haunted PS1 through a streamer I watch, who played through the 2020 demo disc. I might eventually come back to those games in a future video, but for now let's limit ourselves to the more recent demos. Hopefully this video will serve to bring more attention to them. Launching the game sends you to this very stylized startup menu with the usual stuff you can expect. Start, exit, options. I kinda came in with the preconceived notion that I'd be staring at this for the entirety of the demo disc, but I was happily surprised. Every game is launched through an overworld, a museum that you'll have to explore. It's such a nice touch, I feel like it adds so much to the mood. Plus if you don't feel like walking around, there's the free play option on the main menu that lets you access a list of every game available, bootable from there. To match the anthology nature of the demo disc, today's video structure will be a little different than usual. Each game is its own self-contained experience, and the video will be separated in chapters. That way you can pick and choose which one you want to hear about. I won't be delving super deep into each of them. Most games go anywhere from 10 to 30 minutes of gameplay, and I don't want this video to be over an hour long, so take each segment as some sort of appetizer, a bit like the demos themselves. It's mostly meant to get you interested in the developer's game instead of dissecting everything. This video cannot replicate the truly unique experience that Haunted PS1 Demo Disc offers. But now that's everything said and done, let's get back to the games. I decided to approach a museum floor by floor with no specific order. I'd just walk around and see what I'd land on. Each demo has its own posters on the wall, as well as a stone tablet with credits, as well as trigger warnings, which is pretty nice to include. I'm also a huge fan of each demo having their own lobby rooms themed after them. It seems like such a small detail, but it adds a lot to the experience. It's like a little preview of what awaits you in there. The first demo I've tried was quite the opener. That which gave chase is an atmospheric walking simulator, taking place in the snowy tundra. Equipped with a sled and a pack of dogs, which you can pet by the way, very important feature, I braved the cold and snowy hills to escort a scientist through the mountains. There's something weirdly serene about traveling through an empty landscape, devoid of anything. Obviously though, this doesn't last too long. A storm is heading our way and the hills are getting slippier the further we go. Also, kinda starting to worry about this guy. He's been staring at me every once in a while, and at this point I'm not sure if I can trust him. It's kinda remarkable how fast the entire mood shifted from relaxing to tense. Personally, I felt my heart racing when I got to the cabin in the middle of nowhere. Opening its door transported me to a forest with only one of my dogs and a hunting rifle in hand. Something is out there howling. I heard gunshots, 3 of my dogs are missing. I need to know what's gonna happen. I do have to mention, I had a bit of a problem with the controls at the start. I found myself in a position where I couldn't progress because I fell off on a slope, and every time I tried getting back up, my sled would tip again. But besides that, That Witch Cave Chase was a very fun experience to go through. It's short, sweet, and its story has me interested. Can't wait to see more of it. Next demo is Fiend's Isle, a roguelike action RPG inspired by retro first-person games. I've always had an appreciation for dark fantasy games with gloomy atmospheres, so I was very pleased by the overall look. The menus and general vibe reminds me a lot of Kingsfield, which is a big plus. You explore dungeons, kill slimes, skeletons, and solve puzzles. It's pretty straightforward, but it was a super fun demo. I got to appreciate the variety of weapon types, especially after my embarrassing death to a sand snake. My favorite weapon is the crossbow. I like having a range advantage. I went from cowering after every sword swing to just unloading this bad boy on mobs. Most of them were unable to reach me in my superior kiting skills. Fiend's Isle is definitely on the shorter side. A bit obvious and I don't really want to repeat it for every game, but most demos tend to have the same comment in my notes. By the time I was fully immersed, it was almost over, but at least it's got me looking forward for the full release because I was hooked till the very end. For our next game, I don't want to fall back on the YouTube reviewer calling a game weird stereotype, so let me try something a bit more honest. Mummy Sandbox is this unique and highly addictive point-and-click puzzle game set in a surreal world. You're pretty much an archaeologist. You exhume bodies out of the sand, find items, and solve challenges. That's what real-life archaeologists do, right? I came in with the preconceived idea that a world this peculiar would offer puzzles that are a bit too complicated, but I was extremely wrong. Mummy Sandbox makes you think outside the box, but it never feels too hard or complicated. A lot of the puzzles make you reflect and think back, and when it does click, you kinda feel bad because you spent 10 minutes going from one map to the other cluelessly. Despite having a relatively simple premise and gameplay loop, the game never outstays its welcome. New mechanics are introduced throughout the demo, and it's been a blast playing it. This is one of the games that's gotten a proper Steam release while I was working on this script. It's like 4 of my obscure Canadian currency for about an hour of gameplay. Definitely worth its price if it continues what the demo set up so nicely. Up next we have The Salt Order, an adventure horror game in which you, a prisoner, is enrolled by the Witches of the Salt to retrieve their ancient grimoire. If you succeed this task you will be set free, but if you don't, a tragic fate awaits you. The book is conveniently lost in the depths of an extremely ominous forest. Thankfully, the witches bestowed upon thee the power of salt, and you will 100% need it since the monsters outside are both incredibly terrifying and oppressive. At first I thought the monster's AI was a bit unforgiving, but turns out I was just really stingy with the salt. In my mind, this tiny little line would miraculously stop everything in its path, as if my pursuers couldn't just walk around it. I quickly learned that only a full line would cut them off and prevent them from snapping my neck like a twig. Whenever I'd hear the slightest noise, I would go full-on panic mode. I spent a lot of my time looking over my shoulder just in case I removed the salt line too early. I had a great time with the Salt Order. The concept was cool, the aesthetic and general vibe were great, and I was so happy when I reached the end, like, I actually managed to survive, holy shit. Apolysis is a third-person narrative experience where you explore the depths of an old refinery. I don't know how to explain it, but I felt uneasy walking through those rust-covered halls. Having the abandoned facility transition to this utter abstract world conveys well this feeling of hostility the environment offers, as if no matter where you go, you're never really welcome. The game's vagueness towards its plot had me interested. There's an altar to some sort of goddess, there's metamorphosis mentioned, a body hanging on a wall, pulsating organs in the distance. The overall experience felt really cool, but a little lacking in gameplay. The tank controls initially gave me the impression that this would be more along the lines of a fixed camera angle, puzzle-solving horror game, but so far it seems more like a small taste of what's to come, mostly focused on the set pieces. Regardless, Apolysis seems pretty promising so far. Being in the shoes of a detective was not something I expected out of this collection, but yet here we are. Loveland is an immersive horror game taking place in a trailer park where residents seem to have formed a mysterious cult revolving around the frog's local population. Frog moonshine, spider farm, scattered notes detailing the ramblings of a cultist. It's up to you to investigate the scene and figure out what's truly hiding in Loveland Cove. The setting had me on high alert the entire time. You're not welcome here, and the style conveys that very well, with this dark red hue on everything. Going from one home to another in the middle of the night in this completely deserted trailer park, it felt pretty unnerving. I definitely had a few scares and the demo left a good impression on me. I hope I get to solve this case soon. Taking the mantle of the coolest guy on earth, the Chameleon is a 70s inspired sci-fi stealth game in which you have to escape from this heavily guarded warehouse. The vibe for this game is super fun. From the moment you boot up the game, you're met with this cool live-action cutscene, and then you're instantly thrown into this really colorful escape sequence. This is definitely a testament to how wildly different each game from this compilation is. The stealth mechanics are pretty much top-notch, the AI never feels unfair, but beyond that, the game definitely shows its cracks. The energy system used for running, punching, and transforming into guards is really inventive, and I wish I could enjoy it more, but it feels pretty unforgiving. I know there's a 5-second cooldown for punches where your energy doesn't come back, but I still had some issues. I don't know if it was a bug, but sometimes my energy simply wouldn't refill or take way longer than usual. And even though you can increase your energy bar, the gains from those collectibles felt so small that I stopped exploring overall since it didn't feel worth my time. Which is such a shame since the Chameleon's concept is so unique. This is also a game that did get a full release by the time I'm writing this, so hopefully some of those complaints got addressed. It's still very much worth a play in my opinion. Next game is a character-focused horror game made in RPG Maker, perfectly up my alley. Taking place in Vienna, Austria, an Outcry follows the Unnamed, our protagonist who accidentally locked himself out of their apartment with no cigarettes or lighter. It's gonna be that type of night, huh? You explore the apartment complex hoping to bum a smoke from a neighbor, but one of them is a sad old lady whose husband may or may not have skipped town, another one instantly misgenders you, and the last one dead-names you and drops that you'll never be a real girl. Whew, off to a great start I see. Thank God for Anne though. She's the Unnamed's friend, my rock, my anchor, and the absolute best. If anything happens to her, I will cry. I'd feel bad spoiling anything when it comes down to plot, so that's pretty much all I can say. It kicks in at the end of the demo and it's got me wanting more. I love the setting, the character design, especially when it comes to the unnamed. The artwork and the aesthetic are just wonderful. The style fits perfectly this bleak, dark world, yet there's still some charm to it. I left the demo with a strange tightness in my chest. The topics approached in the game are not for everyone. Those trigger warnings at the start are there for a reason. The way those serious topics are presented in-game made me appreciate the experience even more. Really looking forward to an Outcry's full release. Who knew that an atmospheric narrative game about the final hours of an MMORPG would be this touching? Agony of a Dying MMO feels more like a vehicle to transmit a story than a game, and it ended up feeling weirdly personal. The premise of this demo is kept vague at best, but was still oddly compelling. There's rumors of a curse affecting the real-life players behind max-level characters, as well as this mysterious character Adam, who's talked about constantly. Being able to travel through the desolate landscape of a world that used to be full is an experience that's very hard to replicate. This demo brought back memories of my own life, of this weird empty feeling after seeing a world I spent hours in slowly fade into obscurity until it becomes permanently offline. Conversations that were once about gameplay slowly turn into those introspective dialogue about the player behind the avatar. The social aspect of online games is often overlooked when it comes to discussion. It usually revolves around mechanics, gameplay, or even lore, but this demo was the complete opposite. At times it felt raw and emotional. The shaky voice acting, the strangely profound conversations, every character felt like someone I could have known online. The dark humor and tone also fits perfectly for its setting. The car ride sequence alone made this experience more than worth it. Everything in Agony of a Dying MMO is presented in such an earnest way. It's definitely not going to be for everyone, but I personally loved it. Protagoras Bleeds is a classic survival horror game following a couple on their way to start a new life, when suddenly in the middle of the night their car breaks down. Luckily enough, there's a motel nearby. After all, it's probably better to just sleep it off and wait till the morning. God, I wish. Very early on, you realize that things aren't as they seem. The motel may look empty, but something insidious resides in here. Tank controls, limited inventory space, some elements of puzzle solving, all of this helps to set the mood for what is a promising homage to its predecessors. I did have a bit of trouble with the controls though. It can sometimes feel a bit sluggish. I get that it's inspired by older similar control schemes, but some fine-tuning would do it justice. It didn't deter too much from the experience. I really like what Protagoras Bleeds brings to the table. The monster design and environment is right up my alley. This demo hit just the right spot with the perfect amount of nostalgia and body horror. Heading to the second floor of the museum, I was greeted with Janitor Bleeds, probably one of the scariest demo I've played so far. And I don't mean that lightly. It's set in this old arcade that you have to explore. As soon as I noticed you could go prone on top of being able to crouch, I knew something was up. I'm gonna have to hide from something and I don't know if I'm ready to see what it is. Throughout the arcade, there's only one game working by the name of Janitor. The only way to progress is by playing it, and it seems that actions taken in the game affect the world around you. Every time I had to interact with one of those arcade machines, I felt like something was breathing down my neck. I was sweating the entire time I was navigating through the building. Having to crawl through the vents made me feel so claustrophobic. Oh, and that bathroom scene completely took me by surprise. When I saw the word hide on the wall, it kinda took me a second to realize, I gotta get the fuck out of here. Janitor Bleeds was this amazing blend of surrealist horror and exploration. I loved it. The Lunar Effect is a psychological horror puzzle game in which you awaken in a dark and unfamiliar mansion. To find your way out of here, you'll need to use your wits, and most importantly, your time. Every action taken or item found matters now more than ever since your time is limited. I don't know how well this concept is going to translate to a full game, but I loved it so far. I constantly felt this looming sense of dread whenever I'd hesitate during a puzzle or couldn't find the solution right away and had to backtrack. Fortunately, by the time I was done, I found that the 30 minutes available was pretty generous, but still, what a novel concept. As for the aesthetic side of things, I couldn't have asked for more. Even though the Lunar Effect clearly takes some inspiration from horror titles like Silent Hill and Resident Evil, they successfully managed to give it its own spin. The experience was unnerving till the very end, and when I finally did meet an enemy, I just panicked. My heart was racing way too fast. Definitely can't wait to see more of this. While some demos lean more on the atmospheric horror side, this one clearly prefers high-octane action. In Pathogen X, you play as a special force agent who's been tasked with quite the heavy mission. Infiltrate the Delta Core research facility, find the vaccine, and get out before the lab gets nuked. The demo only allows us to play one game mode, Arcade, in which the placement of items, enemies, and the level itself are randomly arranged. You get a rank at the end based on how well you perform, and overall, it's been pretty fun. Big fan of the over-the-shoulder view. It's something I've always liked from survival horror games, and the controls felt second nature to me. The monster design was great, the style is something I really enjoyed, the green test tubes contrast so well with the sterile lab walls. I almost died a couple times because I was just looking around. With a campaign mode coming further through development, Pathogen X is going to become very replayable. I've always liked school settings in video game. It's such a familiar place, yet if you take away all the noise and people, the mood shifts very fast into the uncanny. Risu is a third-person survival horror game taking place in, you guessed it, an empty school. You spend your time exploring the different classrooms and fighting items to solve puzzles in hopes of crossing this blue flame barrier that blocks the staircase. The retro aesthetic fits really well and helps to give Risu this unique yet familiar vibe. I really want to talk about my favorite moments real fast. There's this front area with lockers that's illuminated throughout the entire game, but after solving the restroom puzzle, you come back to the same area but it's completely dark this time. Absolutely horrifying. I didn't stay there long, I was afraid something was out to get me. And then later on, the demo ends on this super cool boss fight. I love its design and the music was really a nice change here. I'm hoping to see more of Risu soon, because the demo left a really good impression on me. After spending the last couple hours getting chased by monsters, it feels good to play a game where the only danger is my own clumsiness. Lorn's Lure is a first-person platformer putting you in the shoes of an android. Following a mysterious glitch led us to this giant underground complex, and I think it's probably safe to say, if you're afraid of heights, don't look down right now. The mechanics are fairly simple, but they fit well together. The movement feels seamless, sliding into a long jump to gain extra reach only to climb onto the walls felt really good. Even though I went pretty slow because I was looking around, you can tell there's going to be some speedrunning potential here. You respawn fast after dying, the checkpoints are extremely generous, you'll never have to redo entire segments because you tripped, and there's even a dedicated restart button if you realize mid-jump you messed up. There's also a button giving hints as to where to go if you're lost. Lorn's Lure was extremely fun to play through. I can't wait to see what else it has to offer. I grew up with a lot of 3D platformers, so I had a feeling I would enjoy Peeb Adventures, but I don't think I expected having this much fun. I had this huge childish grin the entire time. It has what you'd expect. Tight but not unfair platforming. It was a little tough at the start, but once I got the hang of the grappling hook mechanic, it was amazing. The main hub, the castle, and the snow level all felt incredibly vibrant and colorful. The character design is adorable. If they ever end up making Peeb or Orbital figures, you know I'd be the first one in line to buy them. They're just so cute. The light puzzle solving was fun, finding ways to navigate through each room felt rewarding. There's some underlying spookiness just waiting to be found, like that weird Jesus painting in the castle, or whatever that glitch was that caused the Monkey King to explode. I really don't know what else to say besides, go play it, it's just that good. This one's a bit tough to talk about. Still Ridge is about an astral traveler who navigates through the dreams and nightmares of the citizens of a small town in West Virginia. This concept alone was enough to get me interested. What I got to play though was an adaptation of PT but with fixed camera angles. And I know this is probably implying that the segment is someone's nightmare, but I just kept wondering, when is it gonna be its own thing? The mechanics and puzzles felt fine, the game itself isn't bad, but I guess it felt more like a technical demo than something teasing a future story. And the thing is, Still Ridge still has plenty of potential. A new trailer was revealed during Haunted PS1's E3, and it was mind-blowing. That's what I wanted to experience. It's so strange and out there, but it's exactly what I wanted. I hope Still Ridge continues to stand on its own feet, because what I saw during the trailer changed my opinion completely. Nothing beats a walk in the neighborhood, right? In this Japanese stealth horror game entitled Walk, you play as a schoolgirl on her way home. As you traverse the oddly deserted streets, you will soon realize that you're not as alone as you thought. There's a shadowy entity resembling a tengu that's roaming around town, which would probably explain all the crows we keep seeing. So you have to hide real fast before it catches you, and that's probably where the bulk of my problems happened. The controls felt a bit unresponsive. There were moments where I felt like my character was automatically steering away from where I was going, so it did make the game a little harder. Regardless, Walk's concept is something that resonated with me. Since the monster can hear your footsteps, it's recommended to find a place to hide or walk very slowly. And having a horror game tell you to take your time was kind of refreshing. On top of that, the character design, the almost photorealistic backgrounds, and the overall art direction was just amazing. If you're looking for a stylized horror experience, Walk doesn't disappoint. Welcome to the town of Harf in rural Wales, where you can just sit back and enjoy your coffee at the local diner. No government cover-up going on here, trust me. Oh that? Don't worry about it. All jokes aside, Chasing Static is a psychological horror short story. The beginning is really smooth and almost lures you into this false sense of security. You drive up to this small roadside diner, have casual conversation with the lady who works there, and oh, there she goes. Once it kicks in, it really doesn't hold back. I deeply enjoyed the almost open world exploration you get to do once you're outside. The demo ends shortly after that, but it's got me wanting more. Fortunately, by the time this video goes live, Chasing Static will have received its full release since it's scheduled for October 14th. ECHOSTASIS is probably the closest equivalent to having a game or a console glitch out on you. It's unexpected, maybe even startling, but I can't seem to take my eyes off of it. This demo drops you into this beautiful retro-futuristic world, and what seems like a basic puzzle slowly devolves into a narrative about test chambers and algorithms having more and more control over humanity. I'm not doing it any favor by trying to over-explain its concept, so it's probably better if you play this one by yourself. All I can say is that the visuals were impressive, I love the CRT aesthetic, the narrative was intriguing, and that has me very optimistic about ECHOSTASIS' future. The Drowning Machine was extremely tough for me to play through. Not because of its gameplay, by all means, it was smooth in that regard, but because its topic kinda reopened an old wound I didn't properly tend to. I try not to overshare when it comes to personal life, but last year, a friend of mine took their own life. And having a game offer a very similar topic, I wasn't really ready. I know it might sound weird, but after having played this demo, I kinda felt better, like it allowed me to grieve in some way. It allowed me to understand that someone out there can relate to that feeling I have in my chest. The Drowning Machine is this beautifully crafted interactive narrative spliced with poems from Charlie Schulz, who passed away in February of 2019. I can't imagine how hard it must have been to work on this game, especially after having lost a friend, but I think the least I can do is thank you directly. To both Charlie and Aiden, you've made a game, a piece of art that's profoundly changed my life. Probably for the better, and I'd feel bad reviewing it as I would any other game. From the bottom of my heart, thank you. And for you, the viewer, do yourself a favor and go play it yourself. I can't promise that it'll have the same effect on you as it did on me, but the Drowning Machine is just this genuine heart-to-heart. I don't think I will ever have the right words to describe how much of a thoughtful experience it was, how much it's made me reflect, and I'm really grateful for that. I spent a lot of time as a teen playing Source Game with my friends, Half-Life, Team Fortress, Counter-Strike, but most importantly, Gmod. So when I saw there was a demo acting as a direct homage to it, I was happily surprised. tmOD is dedicated to the Half-Life 2 modding scene in the form of a cursed copy of Gmod. And I don't know how to say this, but it feels right. There's always been something weird and uncanny about playing on GM Construct alone. It's short, strange, but deeply enjoyable. tmOD is this very creative and unique look at a game that must have contributed to such a significant amount of online friendships over the years. Even though there's not really a narrative, it's a game best experienced by fully immersing yourself and pretending it's 2007 again. Low poly aesthetic, flashy neon colors, and fast-paced platforming, Toree 3D has pretty much everything required for a PS1 or N64 era platformer. The controls are tight, the level design puts emphasis on speed, and replayability is definitely one of its strengths. My only complaint, well, it's not really a complaint but more of a side note, is that the horror elements don't really seem to go anywhere. It didn't really bother me since I was more into the gameplay itself, but I can't help but wonder if the spooky factor was a last-minute addition or if it was gonna play a big part in the full game. Which, speaking of, Toree 3D is already out, and on top of that, a sequel released last month. I'm hoping to pick both of these and fully review them in the near future. Even though its spooky additions didn't do much for me, I can see the gameplay itself becoming incredibly addictive. Going to the doctor is probably one of my biggest fears, so you can assume that I wasn't exactly thrilled with the prospect of waking up in a hospital basement with no recollection as to what happened prior to that. The Heilwald Loophole is a really unique take on classic survival horror games, avoiding crazed doctors and nurses, but with an important twist. Every time you die, you find yourself back in the basement. The art style complements well how dark and tense the atmosphere is, but as much as I like the concept and most of the execution, I found the demo to be a little bit unforgiving in its chase sequences, especially at the start. The game doesn't handhold you at all, so a lot of it was trial and error. After a couple failed attempts at escaping the doctor, the scare factor was pretty much gone and I was left with a bit of frustration over not understanding where to go, or sometimes even what got me caught. I still think the Heilwald Loophole has a lot of potential. It has a great setting, a wonderful atmosphere, and most importantly, a solid concept. I had fun despite my complaints, and I guess I'm just gonna have to toughen up before I get my next injection. It's kinda fitting that the last game I'd play on floor 3 would be Ghastly Goodies. After choosing one of the two protagonists, you're dropped on the side of the road by your parents who are late for a party. What do you mean I can start trick-or-treating here? I'm in the middle of nowhere! You go around this creepy town collecting candies and solving puzzles. Don't get fooled by the art style though. This game is surprisingly good at making you feel tense. The chase sequence with this huge shadowy creature legit took me by surprise, and once I found myself in the basement, I didn't expect to get my head chomped off. I feel like Ghastly Goodies struck the right balance between scary and cute. It was a really good way to end the demo disc. Oh, funny me, did I say we were done? No, we got more ahead of us. Once you're done with the 25 games available on the Haunted PS1 Demo Disc, you can head to the basement for a secret game. Scully's Nightmare is this adorable callback to early 3D Collectathon. Your goal is to collect the 15 CDs spread across the island and to make your way to the castle at the top of the level. Even though the core gameplay is pretty simple, it allows for a certain mechanical mastery, like with the long jump done by throwing your head further in your body. Also, is it just me or does the bug buzz sound exactly like Television from Chibi Robo? Anyway, I had this huge grin the entire time I played through Scully's Nightmare. Which probably cannot be said for the last game I've played. Anomalous Research Department, or ARD for short. It scared the fuck out of me. I really don't want to spoil too much about it, just know that there's a computer in the museum's basement that needs a password. That password can be found if you explore the museum thoroughly, and the game locked behind that computer is just amazing. There's some really good and terrifying art, another smaller game taking place in this creepy motel, and I think it wraps really nicely this entire compilation. I'd like to take this moment to thank everyone who's worked so hard on those projects. The entire Haunted PS1 community, as well as you for making it this far through the video. I didn't expect to make this big of a video for Halloween, especially after the Freaky Stories one, but once I started playing through the demo disc, I knew I couldn't pass an opportunity like that. I've had such a fun time, and there were no games I left without a smile or just thinking to myself, man, that was cool, I'd love to see more of it. So once again, thank you for joining me on this extra spooky journey. I'll keep looking forward to the next one. Until then, happy Halloween.
Thank you.